The kitchen clock ticked softly above the sink, its steady rhythm filling the silence as I sat at the worn oak table with my journal open in front of me. The lamplight cast a warm circle on the page, making the black ink glisten as my pen moved across the paper. Writing had always been my way of making sense of the world, a private sanctuary where my thoughts could spill freely, unjudged and uninterrupted. At least, that's how it used to be. These days, it felt like even my sanctuary was under scrutiny. Emily's voice cut through the quiet, sharp, and impatient. "Are you seriously writing again, Mom?" I looked up to see her standing in the doorway, her hands on her hips, a perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched in disapproval. At 24, my daughter had perfected the art of looking both beautiful and annoyed at the same time. She was dressed to go out, her hair loose in shiny waves, her perfume lingering in the air like a promise of youth and freedom. "Yes," I said simply, my pen hovering over the page, "just finishing a thought." She groaned dramatically and rolled her eyes so hard I was half surprised they didn't get stuck. "Mom, you spend more time writing in that thing than actually living. Don't you ever get tired of, reliving the past all the time?" Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. I forced a small smile, the kind mothers wear when they're swallowing hurt for the sake of peace. "It's not about reliving the past," I said quietly. "It's about remembering it, processing it." Emily shrugged, already half-turned toward the hallway. "Whatever you say. I just don't get it. No one's ever going to read that stuff, you know? It's just words. Just words." She didn't mean to be cruel, I told myself. She was young, ambitious, and busy trying to carve out her place in the world. She didn't understand how those just words had saved me more times than I could count. I stared down at the journal, the pages thick with years of entries, moments of joy, grief, anger, and resilience. Every late-night worry, every heartbreak, every small victory lived inside those lines. To Emily, they were meaningless scribbles. To me, they were evidence that I'd survived. "You should get out more," she added, grabbing her purse from the counter. "Maybe join a book club or take a dance class or something fun. Sitting here every night writing. It's kind of sad, Mom." My chest tightened, but I didn't respond. What could I say? That I'd always dreamed of writing a book, but bills and diapers and overtime shifts had pushed that dream aside. That this journal was the only thing that ever truly felt like mine? Instead, I nodded and let her go, the click of the front door echoing through the house. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat perfectly still for a long moment, staring at the words I'd just written. My hand trembled slightly as I picked up the pen again. Emily didn't understand, and maybe she never would. But my writing wasn't for her approval, or anyone else's. It was for me, for the version of myself who had kept going when life fell apart, who had stayed up nights scribbling on tear-stained pages just to keep from breaking. I pressed my pen firmly to the paper and finished my thought, my jaw set with quiet determination. "It's not for them," I whispered into the empty room. "It's for me." And I kept writing. Even as the night closed in around me, the house silent except for the scratch of my pen and the steady beat of my heart. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds, casting thin stripes across my kitchen table. My journal sat closed in front of me, but my thoughts were wide open, restless and tangled. Emily hadn't texted since she left last night, not that I expected her to. My daughter had always been quick to move forward while I tended to look back. With a sigh, I pushed back from the table and went to the hallway closet. Stacked neatly on the top shelf were boxes labeled by year, 1998, 2001, 2007, 2012, and so on. My life, documented one spiral-bound notebook at a time. I brought down one of the older boxes, brushing off a thin layer of dust. The cardboard felt soft and worn at the edges, like something that had been handled with reverence and pain in equal measure. Sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, I lifted the lid and carefully pulled out a journal, bound in faded blue leather. When I opened it, the pages smelled faintly of ink and time. The first entry I flipped to was dated May 14th, 1999, the year Emily was born. My handwriting was uneven, almost frantic, as if I'd been racing to capture my feelings before they slipped away. Emily's asleep in her bassinet. David didn't come home again tonight. I keep telling myself he's just out late with friends. But deep down, I know the truth. I feel like a single mother already, even though we're still technically a family. Sometimes I wonder if he even sees me anymore. My throat tightened as I read. I remembered those nights vividly, the loneliness, the endless cycle of feeding and rocking a newborn, while my husband's promises dissolved into thin air. David had been charming when we first met, all ambition and big ideas. He was an artist, or so he liked to say, forever chasing inspiration. But inspiration, I learned, often came bottled and cheap. As Emily grew, so did his disappearances, until one day he simply didn't come back at all. I turned to another entry, dated 3 years later. Emily asked where her daddy is today. I told her he's away working on something important. The lie burned in my throat, but what else could I say? I had $3 in my wallet and half a tank of gas. I don't have the luxury of falling apart. The memory of that day still cut deep. That was the day I got my second job at the diner, scrubbing sticky tables until my hands cracked just to keep the lights on. Writing had been my only solace back then. My journal didn't care that my apron smelled like grease or that my feet ached so badly I cried in the shower. It just listened. Flipping through the pages was like walking through a museum of my own life. There were moments of heartbreak, yes, but also small triumphs. The first time Emily read a book by herself, the night we stayed up late making homemade Halloween costumes, the day I finally paid off the last of my debt. Each entry was proof that I'd kept going, even when I wanted to give up. Emily never saw that side of things. To her, our life was simply normal. She didn't see the nights I went without dinner so she could have seconds, or the times I sold my wedding ring and family heirlooms just to cover rent. As I closed the journal, I felt a wave of longing, not for David, but for the woman I used to be, the one who believed love could fix anything, who thought her dreams mattered. I placed the journal gently back into the box and stared at the stack of filled notebooks beside me. Emily might think they were meaningless scribbles, but to me, they were evidence of a life fought for and fiercely lived. When I heard the creak of the front door, I quickly slid the box back onto the shelf. Emily walked in, phone in hand, already mid-conversation with a friend. She barely glanced at me before disappearing into her room. I sat there for a long moment, surrounded by silence and memories, wondering if she'd ever truly understand how much of my heart lived in those pages. Emily sat at the edge of the couch, scrolling on her phone with a restless energy that filled the room. I could tell by the way her foot tapped against the carpet that she had something to say. She always did. Finally, she looked up, her eyes bright with barely contained excitement. "Mom, I got the job offer." I blinked. "The one in New York?" She nodded, grinning. "It's with this big marketing firm in Manhattan. It's everything I've been working for." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile even as my heart twisted. "That's wonderful, honey. I'm proud of you." And I was, truly. But beneath the pride was a sharp pang of fear. New York was a long way from Oregon, and I knew how distance could stretch a relationship until it snapped. "When do you leave?" I asked. 2 weeks. She bit her lip, then added, "It's fast, I know, but this is my shot, Mom. I can't say no." Her words were filled with the kind of certainty only youth can carry, and I didn't want to be the one to dim it. Still, a heaviness settled in my chest. "That's soon," I said softly. Emily's gaze flicked toward the stack of journals on the kitchen counter, which is why, before I go, maybe you should think about doing something real with your time. You know, instead of all this. She gestured toward the journals like they were clutter. My cheeks burned. "Writing is real to me." "Sure, but it's not productive." She shrugged. "You've been scribbling in those things for decades. It's like you're stuck in a loop. I just don't want you to be lonely when I leave." The sting of her words went deeper than she knew. "I'm not stuck," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Those journals are my history, our history." Emily rolled her eyes. "Mom, no one cares about that stuff. You should join a club or take up painting or something. Move on." My hands trembled as I gathered the journals into a stack, clutching them to my chest like a shield. "You don't get to tell me what matters," I said quietly. Emily sighed, exasperated. "Fine." Forget I said anything. She went to her room, shutting the door with a soft but final click. That night, I sat at my desk long after Emily had fallen asleep. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of the floorboards and the whisper of my pen across paper. Her words replayed in my mind. Move on. Do something real. For years, my journals had been private, my safe space, my truth. But maybe there was something more I could do with them. I opened one of the older notebooks and began flipping through, reading entries that felt like time capsules. A thought struck me. What if I gathered these stories into one place? Not just for me, but for others who might need to know they weren't alone. The idea terrified me. It also thrilled me. Slowly, tentatively, I began to type on the old laptop Emily had left behind when she upgraded. I copied passages, reorganized memories, filled in the blanks between years. It wasn't just a journal anymore. It was becoming a narrative. My narrative. 3 nights later, Emily found me at the desk, my screen glowing in the dark. "What are you doing?" she asked, suspicion in her voice. I hesitated, then answered honestly. "I'm writing a memoir." Her laugh was short and incredulous. "A memoir? Seriously?" "Yes, seriously." I met her gaze, my spine straightening. "These stories matter. I matter." Emily leaned over my shoulder, reading a paragraph aloud in a mocking tone. I sat alone in the dark, listening to the hum of the fridge, wondering how I'd pay rent this month. "Wow, Mom, riveting stuff." The words hit me like a slap. "Stop it." "Why?" she demanded. "Why do you want to air all this sadness? Who would even want to read it?" My throat tightened. "Because it's my life. Because someone might need to hear it." Emily shook her head, frustrated. "You're just wallowing." "No," I said firmly, standing now. "I'm surviving. There's a difference." The argument escalated from there, voices rising, decades of unspoken pain spilling into the open. Finally, Emily grabbed her keys and stormed out, leaving me standing alone, my hands trembling and my heart pounding. The house felt cavernous in her. Absence. But I sat back down at the desk, wiped my tears, and began to write again. Harder, faster, more determined than before. If Emily couldn't see my worth, then I'd write until the whole world did. The house felt unbearably quiet after Emily left. Her departure wasn't dramatic. No tearful goodbyes or heartfelt promises to call every day. Just a rushed hug at the airport, the scent of her perfume clinging to my coat, and then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd at security. I drove home alone, the radio off, my chest hollow. For 24 years, my life had revolved around Emily. Now every corner of the house echoed with her absence. The empty cereal bowl in the sink, the unmade bed, the coat still hanging by the door, all of it felt like a ghost haunting me. At first, I busied myself with chores. I scrubbed the floors, reorganized the pantry, even cleaned out the attic. But the stillness always crept back, settling into my bones like winter cold. Our phone calls were short and polite. "Hey, Mom, I'm good. Busy with work, you okay?" "I'm fine, honey. How's the city?" Loud. "Gotta go. Meeting starting." And then the line would go dead before I could say the words I really wanted to. "I miss you. Please don't forget me." I turned to my writing more than ever. Each night I sat at the desk and poured my loneliness into the keyboard, weaving the fragments of my journals into something whole. The memoir began to take shape like a quilt stitched together from years of fabric scraps, messy but beautiful in its own way. Still, I felt isolated. Writing alone was one thing, but sharing those words? That was terrifying. One rainy Tuesday while running errands, I spotted a flyer pinned to the bulletin board at the community center. "Writers welcome, join our local storytellers group. Tuesdays at 7 p.m. I almost tore it down and threw it away. My stories weren't good enough for strangers, but something deep inside me whispered, "Go, just once." The following Tuesday, I stood outside a small classroom at the center, clutching a folder of pages so tightly my knuckles ached. Laughter and conversation spilled from inside. I almost turned back, but then a woman with short silver hair opened the door. "Are you here for the group?" she asked warmly. I nodded, my voice catching. "Yes, first time." "Come on in," she said. "We're friendly, I promise." Her name was Janet, and she introduced me to everyone, a handful of retirees, a young man writing poetry, a middle-aged dad working on a fantasy novel. When it came time to share, my hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the pages. I read a section about Emily's first day of kindergarten, my voice wavering but steadying as I went. When I finished, the room was quiet. My stomach twisted until Janet spoke. "That was beautiful, Marian. Honest and raw." The others nodded, offering gentle, thoughtful feedback. For the first time in my life, my words weren't just floating into the void. They were heard. Over the next few weeks, I kept coming back. Slowly, the group became my lifeline. Janet, in particular, became a dear friend, always encouraging me to keep going. One night, after I read a particularly emotional chapter about David leaving, Janet leaned forward, her eyes shining. "Marian, you need to share this with more people," she said. "There's a contest coming up. The prize is publication and, well, a little recognition." My instinct was to laugh it off. "Oh no, I couldn't." "Why not?" she challenged gently. "You've been through hell and back, and you've captured it with such grace. Other women need to hear this." Her words sank deep into my heart. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in the empty room, staring at my manuscript. The next morning, I printed a copy, sealed it in a plain envelope, and mailed it to the contest address. I didn't tell Emily. I didn't even tell Janet. As the envelope slipped through the slot at the post office, my breath caught. "No one will probably read it," I whispered to myself, but at least I tried. The following weeks passed in a blur of routine: work, chores, writing group meetings. I tried not to think about the contest, tried not to hope. But late at night, when the house was silent and Emily's absence pressed hardest against my ribs, I found myself imagining what it might feel like to have my story out in the world. Not for fame, not for money, just to know that my life had meant something beyond these walls. The mail was usually the same every day: bills, grocery store flyers, and the occasional charity appeal. I didn't expect anything different that morning. It was a crisp autumn day, the kind where the air smells faintly of wood smoke and fallen leaves crunch beneath your shoes. I slipped on my cardigan and went to the mailbox, thinking only about whether I needed milk and eggs. But when I opened the little metal door, a thick cream-colored envelope sat on top of the usual stack. It was heavier than the others, with a gold-embossed seal in the corner. My name, Marian Carter, was printed neatly across the front. My hands trembled as I pulled it free. I didn't recognize the return address: Hawthorne University, Department of Literature. Frowning, I carried the mail back into the kitchen, setting everything else aside. My heart beat faster as I slid a finger under the flap and opened the envelope. Inside was a single elegant sheet of paper, along with a smaller folded note. I read the first line aloud, my voice barely a whisper. "Dear Ms. Carter, we are pleased to inform you that, after reviewing your submitted manuscript, the faculty committee has unanimously chosen you as this year's recipient of our honorary doctorate of letters, awarded to individuals whose contributions to the literary arts have demonstrated extraordinary personal and cultural impact." My vision blurred. I blinked, thinking I'd misread, but the words stayed the same. Honorary? Doctorate? Me? I sat down hard in the kitchen chair, gripping the letter with both hands. It felt unreal, like a prank or a mistake. But as I read further, the details unfolded clearly. The award ceremony date, a schedule of events, and an invitation for me to speak about my work. Somewhere deep inside, A part of me that had been silent for decades stirred awake. I reached for the smaller note tucked inside the envelope. It was handwritten, the script looping and warm. "Ms. Carter, your memoir moved every single member of our committee. Your story of resilience, motherhood, and perseverance is not only powerful but necessary. We are honored to recognize you and bring your voice to a wider audience." My throat closed up. All the late nights writing by lamplight, all the pages filled with tears and hope and quiet determination. They hadn't just vanished into the void. Someone had seen them. Someone understood. I pressed the letter against my chest and let out a sob that felt like it had been trapped inside me for years. As the initial wave of emotion passed, my first instinct was to call Emily. She'd be shocked, maybe even proud. I imagined her voice. "Wait, what? An honorary degree from a university?" I pictured her wide-eyed face when I told her there would be a ceremony, that people would actually gather to honor me. But just as quickly, doubt crept in. What if she thought it was meaningless? What if she laughed, the way she had when she read my memoir draft months ago? My hands hovered over my phone, then fell back into my lap. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Later that afternoon, I drove to the park near our house, needing space to think. The autumn colors were brilliant, reds and golds shimmering under the pale sun. Families strolled by, children laughed on the swings, and couples held hands. I sat on a bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, clutching the letter like a lifeline. Memories flooded me. The night David left, and I wrote until dawn just to keep from falling apart. The mornings Emily went to school with pigtails and peanut butter sandwiches, never knowing how close we were to losing the house. The countless times I'd felt invisible, like my life didn't matter to anyone but her. And now, here was proof that my story did matter, that my voice had reached beyond these four walls and touched someone else. When I finally went home, I placed the letter on my desk beside my journals. The gold seal gleamed under the lamplight, a promise of something bigger than I'd ever dared to dream. Maybe, I whispered into the quiet room, I wasn't invisible after all. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not just as Emily's mother or a struggling waitress or a lonely woman with stacks of journals, but as Marian Carter, a writer. The letter sat on my desk for 3 full days before I finally gathered the courage to call Emily. Each morning, I would walk past it, glance at the golden seal glinting in the light, and then keep moving, my chest tightening with a mix of pride and dread. What if she didn't care? What if she laughed again, like she did when she skimmed my early drafts and called them sad and self-indulgent? But the ceremony date was approaching, and I couldn't keep it to myself forever. That evening, I made a cup of chamomile tea, set the letter neatly on the table in front of me, and dialed Emily's number. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice rushed and distracted. "Hey, Mom, can we make this quick? I'm about to head into a client dinner." "Sure, honey," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I have some news, something important." There was a pause on the line. "What's going on? You sound serious." I took a breath and dove in. "Do you remember the manuscript I was working on before you left? The one you weren't exactly thrilled about?" "Yeah," she said cautiously. "Why?" "Well, I submitted it to a writing contest, and—" My throat tightened, but I pushed through. "The judges at Hawthorne University read it. They loved it, Emily. They're giving me an honorary doctorate for it. They invited me to a ceremony next month." Silence. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then Emily's voice came through, sharp with disbelief. "Wait, what? An honorary doctorate? Like a real one? From a university?" "Yes, a real one," I said, trying not to let my nerves show. Another pause, then a laugh, short, incredulous. "Wow, I don't even know what to say. Are you sure it's legit? There are so many scams out there, Mom." My cheeks flushed hot. "It's real, Emily. There's a formal letter, a schedule, a speech I'm supposed to give. They even offered to cover my travel expenses." "Wow," she said again, but this time more softly. I guess I didn't think anyone would—" Her voice trailed off. Would what? I prompted gently. That anyone would care about those journals, she admitted. I mean, I always saw them as, I don't know, just your thing, a hobby. Her words stung, but I reminded myself she didn't mean harm. They're not just journals, Emily, I said quietly. They're our story, my story, everything I went through to raise you, to keep us afloat when things fell apart. I needed to tell it. Even if no one ever read it, I needed to write it. On the other end, I heard her take a shaky breath. Mom, she said, her voice softer now, I think I owe you an apology. I blinked, startled. For what? For dismissing it all. For dismissing you, Hinwer. There was a sniffle, and when she spoke again, her voice wavered. I had no idea how much it meant to you, or how much you've been through. I should have been proud of you all along. Tears blurred my vision. Oh, honey, it's okay. You were young. I probably didn't share enough with you either. I wanted to protect you. I don't need protecting anymore, she said softly. I want to be there for you now, for this ceremony, if you'll let me. My breath caught. You'd come home for it? Of course, she said, her voice firm now. I wouldn't miss it for the world. 2 weeks later, I stood at the airport arrivals gate, clutching a bouquet of sunflowers, Emily's favorite. When she finally appeared, suitcase rolling behind her, my heart swelled at the sight of her. Mom, she cried, rushing into my arms. For a long moment, we just held each other, neither of us speaking. When we finally pulled apart, her eyes were shiny with unshed tears. I read some of the chapters you emailed me, she said, her voice thick. I cried through half of them. You're incredible. I smiled through my own tears. We're incredible. Because without you, there wouldn't be a story to tell. That night, we stayed up late at the kitchen table, flipping through old journals and laughing at long-forgotten memories. It felt like a bridge had been rebuilt between us, plank by plank. As I watched her reading one of my oldest entries aloud, I realized something profound. This ceremony wasn't just about me being seen. It was about us finally seeing each other. The day of the ceremony dawned clear and cold, sunlight spilling across the horizon like a promise. Emily and I drove to Hawthorne University in silence, the hum of the car engine filling the space between us. She'd been fussing over my outfit since breakfast, insisting I wear the navy blue dress we'd picked out together, paired with a string of pearls that once belonged to my mother. You look perfect, Mom, she said now, glancing over from the passenger seat with a proud smile. I didn't feel perfect. My palms were sweaty, my stomach knotted. I'd spent weeks drafting and redrafting my speech, yet my voice trembled every time I practiced it. I'd spent most of my life writing alone in the safety of my kitchen, never reading my words to a crowd of strangers. What if I mess up? I whispered. Emily reached over, squeezing my hand. You won't. And even if you do, they'll still love you. They already love you, Mom. You just don't see it yet. Her words settled over me like a warm blanket, quieting some of my fear. The university hall was breathtaking. Rows of velvet-covered chairs faced a grand stage, its backdrop adorned with banners in deep burgundy and gold. Faculty members milled about in their academic regalia, while students chatted excitedly in the aisles. Janet and a few members of my writing group had made the trip, sitting together near the front. When they spotted me, they waved enthusiastically, their smiles wide and encouraging. "Go get 'em, Marian," Janet mouthed, giving me 2 thumbs up. Seeing them there filled me with gratitude. These were the people who first believed in me, who coaxed me out of my shell when I was certain I had nothing worth sharing. When my name was finally announced, a hush fell over the room. "Please welcome this year's recipient of the Honorary Doctorate of Letters," the dean said, his voice rich and formal. "A woman whose courage and storytelling have touched hearts and inspired change, Marian Carter." Applause swelled as I walked to the podium. My knees wobbled, but Emily's encouraging nod from the front row steadied me. I unfolded my speech, the pages trembling slightly in my hands. I took a deep breath, then began. "Thank you," I said, my voice soft but gaining strength with each word. I never imagined I would stand on a stage like this. For most of my life, I've been invisible, a waitress, a single mother, a woman quietly filling notebooks at her kitchen table. I paused, scanning the audience. They were listening, truly listening. Writing was never about fame or recognition for me. It was survival. When my marriage ended, when bills piled up, when loneliness felt like it might swallow me whole, I wrote. My journals were the one place I could be completely honest, where my pain and my hope could coexist on the same page. A lump formed in my throat, but I pushed through. For years, I thought my words were only for me, that they didn't matter to anyone else. But what I've learned is that stories, our stories, connect us. They remind us we're not alone, even in our darkest moments. My gaze found Emily's in the crowd. She was crying openly now, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "This degree isn't just mine," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "It belongs to my daughter, who gave me purpose when everything else fell apart. It belongs to every woman who has ever been told her voice doesn't matter." Applause rippled through the hall, but I wasn't finished yet. So, to anyone sitting here today who feels invisible, unheard, or forgotten, keep telling your story, even if it's just to yourself at first, because one day, those words might light the way for someone else. When I finished, the hall erupted in a standing ovation. I stepped back from the podium, overwhelmed. Emily rushed to the stage as soon as the ceremony ended, throwing her arms around me. "You were incredible," she whispered fiercely. "Mom, you moved them. You moved me." I hugged her back, tears streaming down my cheeks. For the first time, I felt fully seen, not just as Emily's mother or as a survivor, but as a writer with something meaningful to say. That night, back at home, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh journal. The pages were blank, waiting. I opened to the first page and wrote, "Sometimes the words we write to survive become the legacy we leave behind." I set my pen down and smiled, knowing this was only the beginning. 6 months passed in what felt like the blink of an eye, though each day shimmered with a kind of lightness I hadn't known in years. Life didn't magically become perfect after the ceremony, of course. The electric bill still came every month, my knees still ached when it rained, and I still burned the toast more often than not. But there was a new rhythm to my days now, a steadiness born of finally believing that my voice mattered. The morning after the ceremony, I woke to an inbox flooded with messages. Some were from Hawthorne University's staff, sharing photos and videos of my speech. Others were from strangers, people who had read the article the local paper ran about my honorary degree. One message in particular stopped me cold. "Dear Marian, I've never written to an author before, but your words saved me. I was going through a divorce and felt like my life was ending. Then I read about how you survived yours and kept going. You reminded me that even shattered things can be beautiful again. Thank you." I read it 3 times, tears welling in my eyes. My journals had once been my secret lifeline, the place where I processed my grief and fear. Now those same words were offering hope to someone else. It felt like a circle had closed. By summer, things had shifted in ways I hadn't dared to dream. A small press in Boston reached out, offering to publish my memoir. At first, I hesitated, part of me still terrified to have my private thoughts bound in print and placed on shelves for strangers to judge. But Emily wouldn't let me retreat into fear. "Mom," she said, gripping my hands tightly across the table one evening, "this is your story. People need to hear it. I need to hear it." And so I signed the contract. The day the first box of books arrived, Emily and I opened it together in the living room. I ran my fingers over the cover, my name printed in bold letters beneath a faded photo of our old house. It felt surreal, like holding a piece of my soul in my hands. Emily visited more often now, her work trips always conveniently scheduled near home. Our relationship, once frayed and uncertain, had become something tender and strong. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch drinking iced tea, she said, "You know, Mom, when I was a kid, I used to think you were invincible, like you had all the answers. I laughed softly. Oh, honey, I was just trying to keep the lights on and food on the table. Half the time, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. She smiled, her eyes misty. I know that now. And I love you even more for it. You didn't have to be perfect. You just had to show up. And you did, every single day. Her words filled me with a quiet joy I hadn't realized I'd been craving. As autumn rolled in, my memoir began reaching more readers. Bookstores invited me to do signings. A local radio station interviewed me about my journey. Each time I spoke, I felt my confidence grow like a flame fed by oxygen. One evening, after a particularly moving signing, Emily and I sat side by side in the car, driving home under a sky thick with stars. "Do you ever miss the old days?" she asked suddenly. I thought about our cramped apartment, about the nights when I'd scribble by candlelight while she slept beside me on the couch. "I don't miss the struggle," I said finally, "but I do miss how close we were. And you know what? I think we're finding our way back to that now, just in a different way." Emily reached over and laced her fingers with mine. "We are." Later that night, after she'd gone to bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my journal. The house was quiet, save for the ticking of the old wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator. I opened to a fresh page and began to write. Not for publication, not for anyone else's eyes, but for me. As my pen moved across the paper, I realized something profound. This journey hadn't been about a degree or even about the book. It had been about reclaiming myself. For years, I'd been defined by my roles: wife, mother, waitress, survivor. But here, in these pages, I was simply Marian, a woman with a voice, a woman with a story worth telling. I closed the journal and whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you. Not to anyone in particular, but to life itself, for breaking me, for mending me, for giving me the courage to keep writing." The next morning, Emily found me at the table, coffee steaming in front of me, my journal open beside it. She rolled her eyes playfully, just like she used to. "Still writing, huh?" she teased. I grinned. "Always." And this time, when she smiled back, it wasn't exasperation I saw in her eyes. It was pride.